You remember your first heartbreak. You remember the smell of your childhood kitchen, maybe a birthday candle at 6 or 7 years old. Somewhere in your mind, there's a shelf of memories that feels like it stretches back to the very beginning of you. It doesn't. Somewhere between the ages of 2 and 4, for almost every human being on Earth, that shelf simply ends. Not fades, ends. There is no blurry footage of you as a newborn, no dim recollection of the first time you were held. There is only a wall, and behind that wall, nothing you can reach. Scientists have a name for this wall. They call it infantile amnesia. And here's the part that should unsettle you a little. It isn't that babies fail to form memories. Brain scans show the opposite. A baby's brain, especially the hippocampus, is working overtime, absorbing faces, sounds, temperatures, the rhythm of a parent's voice. By some estimates, an infant's brain is forming new neural connections at a rate of over 1 million per second. So the memories are being made. The question that has quietly followed neuroscientists for over a century is this: where do they go? In 1893, an American psychologist named Caroline Miles Hodge asked more than 1,000 people to recall their earliest memory. The answers clustered strangely around the same age, 3.5 years old, almost like every mind had agreed, in advance, on the exact same starting line. Sigmund Freud would later study this pattern too, and he gave it its name. But naming a mystery is not the same as solving it, and for the next 100 years, infantile amnesia remained one of the strangest gaps in human self-knowledge. The first explanation seemed obvious enough. Maybe the infant hippocampus is simply too immature to store memories at all, like a hard drive that hasn't finished being built. For decades, this was the leading theory. Then, in 2016, researchers at Emory University put it to the test using something no one had tried on this scale before: brain imaging of sleeping infants. What they found broke the old assumption apart. The hippocampus was active. It was recording. Babies as young as 6 months could recognize a face they had seen only once, weeks earlier. The storage system was working, which means the memories aren't failing to form. Somehow, they're failing to survive. Here's where the story gets even stranger. In 2014, a team led by neuroscientist Paul Franklin ran an experiment on infant mice. And mice, it turns out, share this same memory blackout that humans do. Franklin's team found that in the earliest weeks of life, the brain is producing new neurons in the hippocampus at an extraordinary rate, a process called neurogenesis. And this flood of new cells appears to physically rewire the very circuits where old memories are stored, overwriting them almost as fast as they're written, like a city constantly tearing down its own foundations to keep building higher. If that theory holds, then the memories of your infancy weren't lost. They were demolished, one neural renovation at a time, to make room for a brain that could hold something more complex than a face or a sound. A brain that could hold language. Identity. A sense of your own continuous self through time. But even this doesn't close the mystery completely, because neurogenesis alone doesn't explain everything researchers have observed. There's another piece to this puzzle, and it has less to do with biology and more to do with something almost philosophical: language. Psychologist Catherine Nelson spent years studying how children talk about their own past, and she found something remarkable. A memory doesn't seem to become a permanent, retrievable story until a child has the words to tell it as one. Before language, an experience might exist in the brain as fragments, a sensation, an emotion, a flash of color, but not yet as a narrative with a beginning and an end. And a narrative, it turns out, is exactly the shape a memory needs in order to survive for decades. Without that shape, even a vividly lived moment can dissolve, because there was never a story built around it to hold it together. So which is it? Is it the demolition crew of new neurons rewriting the infant brain? Or is it the absence of language, a mind with no way yet to narrate itself into permanence? The honest answer, the one most memory researchers will actually give you, is that it's probably both, tangled together in ways science hasn't fully separated. This is one of those rare places where the frontier of human knowledge runs directly through something every single person has personally experienced, and yet can never personally verify. And there's a final twist that makes this even more disorienting. Some of the earliest memories adults report, the ones they'd swear are real, turn out under investigation to be reconstructions. A photograph, seen enough times, can become indistinguishable from a lived memory. A story told by a parent at every birthday can quietly graft itself into your mind as something you witnessed yourself. Elizabeth Loftus, one of the most influential memory researchers of the last 50 years, spent her career demonstrating just how easily the human mind can manufacture a memory that never happened at all, and believe it completely. Which means the wall behind you isn't just empty. It's porous. Things can slip through in the wrong direction, Memories manufactured rather than recovered, and you would have no way of telling the difference from the inside. Think about what that means for the story you tell about who you are. Your entire sense of self rests on a foundation of memory, and yet the first few years of that foundation, the years that arguably shaped you more than any that followed, are inaccessible, rewritten, or possibly invented after the fact. You are, in a very real sense, a stranger to your own beginning. Maybe that's not a flaw in the design. Maybe forgetting those years was the price of becoming someone who could remember anything at all. The brain that held on to every early moment might never have had the room to build a self on top of them. So the wall isn't just an absence. It might be the very thing that made you possible. And somewhere behind it, in a mind that no longer exists in quite the same form, is a version of you who saw the world for the very first time, wide-eyed and nameless, gone long before you ever learned to say goodbye.